welcome, Torkil Færø. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. Very nice to be here.
You too, yes. And so I know we're going to have such a great conversation today and just really give some very practical tips and strategies on how we can live a better life and improve our overall well-being. But before we get into that, do you mind just sharing your backstory and what brought you towards what you do today, your lifestyle, and who you've become through the process?
Yes, I'm a medical doctor, physician, emergency room physician from Norway. I have written a book called The Pulse Cure about how we can use wearables like smartwatches, Aura rings, and so on to track the autonomic nervous system. And the way I got interested in this was actually I did everything wrong in my book. I was living a lifestyle that I was focused on living an adventurous life, sailing with my family, doing adventurous things, and I wasn't really caring about my own health. And then my father died at 73, and then I understood that if I'm going to live a long life and have a healthy life, I need to adjust my lifestyle. So I was weighing 40 pounds overweight. I was eating crap food. I was not caring about my sleep schedule. So I did not exercise at all. I was drinking a couple of glasses of wine every day. All the things that I now know tracking my health that is detrimental for your autonomic nervous system and stress balance. And I didn't do anything else than most people do. This lifestyle is very common, but it's also the lifestyle that robs years from our lives. And not only years, but also our health span is also reduced because of this lifestyle that everybody lives more or less. And then I started tracking these lifestyle changes with wearables like Apple Watches and Garmin watches and so on. And my publisher asked me if this was a book that could be interesting to write. And so I wrote that book, uh, guiding people on how to, get the best lifestyle advices, how this can be shown in the Heartrate. Uh, and it's been just a huge success in Norway. It's been on the bestseller list for a year and a half, translated into 8 other languages and so on. So now I really need to keep my stress level in balance, which is what it's all about, keeping the stress levels in balance and identifying the surprising sources of stress that even I, as a doctor, did not recognize before I started tracking my heart rate.
Yeah, I love that. And just as you're speaking, you're talking about your lifestyle previously, it's so relatable. I mean, I think so many of us have struggled with many of the things that you were before, and you don't even realize it because it creeps up. And life and society is so fast paced that it's like you feel like you're just trying to treadmill, trying to keep up. And like the idea of eating healthy and exercising can sometimes feel overwhelming because of the high paced society that we live in. And I'd love to hear more about that as far as stress, because for stress, it can become so normalized for many of us that we just continually get into this heightened stress response and live there, but don't even realize that we're living in a heightened stress response because it just becomes normal for us. Can you talk about that and how can we become more aware of that?
Yeah, and that is common, because everybody in our modern society lives in a fast pace, and at least not faster than we are made to be, throughout evolution. We are constructed to have most of the day in a down state, in a quiet down state, lots of sleep and so on. And we get used to being tired, we get used to, to struggle through the days and awake and you feel sluggish in the morning and it becomes normal and you think it's normal. At least I did. I thought it was normal. And then when you start getting your stress levels more in balance, you see that, okay, there's another level of feeling refreshed in the morning is I don't have to get tired in the evening. I can still do work in the evening, when you get the stress levels in balance. So we think we're kind of machines, and keep pushing ourselves too hard.
Mhm.
And particularly when we eat food that we're not supposed to eat, and particularly for women, the stress is making so many changes to the hormonal system that they get their periods, they get irregular, they get PMS symptoms, PMDD symptoms, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is kind of a PMS just worse. And You can get endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, troubles getting pregnant, and lots of consequences for the female reproductive health and symptoms. So yeah, it's particularly important for women to be able to track their stress levels,
Mhm.
because once you can see on your wearables, you can see kind of the physiological load on your stress level, then it's so much easier to adjust your speed.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes too, women will attribute to that to be like, oh, I'm aging. That's normal. I should, oh, this is just part of the process. And can you talk about how important it is to take responsibility for your own health and not just kind of relinquish your power to be like, oh, this is just part of the process? Like, how important is that ownership of like, oh, I can do something about this. I'm not just really a victim of my age or a victim of, this external situation that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, we have so much more control of our health than we used to think. Even as doctors, that was part of the reason why I was not caring so much about my own health, was that I didn't think it mattered very much. I knew that it mattered something, that maybe if I did everything right, I could live for 2 or 3 more years. But I thought that, okay, but I have to do effort for 2 and 3 years to get those 2, 3 years extra at the end of my life. And I just didn't think it's worth it. Now we know that there's so much more to gain. We can gain even like 20 years more of extra time, lifetime, if we live in the good lifestyle choices. So, and it's important to take charge of your health and not just be passive and wait until the diseases come your way, which they will, if you don't take care of your stress levels. And also that you can decide and take charge yourself and not just leave the responsibility to the doctor. So when we get these wearables, like physiological speedometers for our own health,
Mhm.
we can take charge of our health. We have control. So it's a major shift in the healthcare system, that the power moves from the doctor and the healthcare system into your own hands, literally. So by reducing or by balancing your stress, we are supposed to stress. We are supposed to put loads in our system. We are supposed to exercise and do hard things. Uh, that will build our resilience, build our strength. But we also need the balance with the down state and the downtime to uh, to make sure that we recover and that our immune system works optimally.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was in one of your socials that you said about, when you're experiencing stress for like 2 to 3 months, that's when you start to see the breakdown of the system physiologically. Can you talk about that? Because I think for many people listening, 2 to 3 months, you're like, well, of course I've been in stress for 2 to 3 months. Can you talk about that
Yeah,
more of like the urgency to actually take care of our health?
yeah. So 2 or 3 months of real hard stress, okay, really tough days, poor
Mhm.
sleep, stressful days, feeling down and stressed. That it doesn't automatically lead to a serious disease, but it opens the gate, so to speak, for serious diseases to take foothold in your body. And that can be as dangerous as cancer, heart disease, autoimmune diseases like thyroid disease, and so on. That can be the consequence, because our immune system's cells, they will renew at a very fast pace. So it's kind of a I don't know which word to put, but it's immune cell can last, for just some days, maybe a week, and so on. So it's if you're in a poor state and the immune system is not working properly, then even a short time as 2 or 3 months can be enough for a disease to break through.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that because I think it just makes you realize how important this is. I think we all know that stress impacts us, but to really talk about the impacts on our body and that many things that we experience can be prevented by just honoring our body and really tuning into it. And that's what I want to get into next because I know you talk about heart rate variability, and I would love for you to first just tell us what that is, and then how do we start to measure that within ourselves?
Yeah, heart rate variability is a variation between heartbeats. So it's not the pulse in itself, the heart rate in itself, that could be 60 or 70 or 80, or if you're jogging, it could be 130. Heart rate variability is a variation between heartbeats, and that can tell you whether you are in the sympathetic stressful state or in the parasympathetic recovery state. Because in the bottom of our brains, we have what we call the autonomic nervous system. It's a system that we share with all other vertebrate animals, with all the other like rats and mice, and this is why we can do research on these animals and tell something about us. So, and in this basic system, then we have the sympathetic nervous system that will activate us towards something that we want, or to fly away from or fight something that threatens us. And we are supposed to be in that state, to survive. But we also need the parasympathetic state where we are relaxed and where the immune system can do its job. And the wonderful thing is that the heart rate can tell us whether we are in the stressful state or in the de-stressed state. Because when we are in the de-stressed state, when we breathe in, the heart rate will go up a little bit because there's more oxygen in the lungs. And then when we breathe out and there is less oxygen in the lungs, the heart rate will go down a little bit. But it's measurable with these variables. It's measurable in milliseconds. And when we are in the stress state, then the heart rate will beat at a very steady pace, regardless of whether we breathe in or out. So that is how the variables can tell us if we are in the stress state or in the de-stress state. And throughout the day and week and month, it can give us an answer to how much we are taxing our stress system. So that is heart rate variability, which is just such an important metric. So you can Google almost any kind of disease, and you can add heart rate variability, and you can find that there is a correlation to so many diseases that we don't really want.
I love that. And it's just like, going off of like business talk, it's like you can't change what you don't measure. So if you're not measuring it, it's hard to really know if you're ever making a change in it. So that's why I love, what you speak about. And how does somebody who's listening, like, do you need something, a special equipment, or can you just use your smartwatch? How can you do that to measure your heart rate variability?
Yeah, you can just use your smartwatch, and there will be, of course, the differences in the smartwatches. Like the Garmin watches are by far the best ones at the moment. You can also use your Apple Watch. I know you have an Apple Watch, and if you then have an app called Athletic, then that is quite good.
Mm.
And particularly if you go into your phone and that you go into the Apple Health, and you can mark that you have atrial fibrillation, even if you don't,
Mhm.
because then the Apple Watch will measure more accurately. So
Interesting.
that is a way to do it more accurately, and then you will also get a good measurement of the state of your physiology.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that because I think that's really helpful. I think many of us will probably do that just so we can be more in tune with that. And I know
Yeah,
you
and
talk about.
many people can also use rings. Many people don't like to wear watches,
Yeah.
and then they can use the Aura ring and other different rings that you can also use for this purpose.
Amazing. I love that. I mean, I think many of us are wearing these things, so it's like you don't even realize the power that you have with you all times to understand this further. And so when we're looking at the variability, because I know having stress in our life is natural and we're all going to experience it, what are we looking for as far as the extent of like the period we're in more of a restful state and the period we're in like a stressful state? What would indicate that we're moving in a better direction? And what are we looking for here?
Um, the watches, they will give you an estimate of this.
Hmm.
So Garmin, for example, they have a system called body battery, and I think that that goes from like 0 to 100, so
Mhm.
that most of the days you would want to have 80 in the body battery. Then you have enough physiological forces for the things that would happen that day, and to try not in the evening to go below 20 in body battery.
Mhm.
So, and the other watches and the other wearables will have similar systems, that will tell you in the morning how recovered you are and give you an estimate, that today you can go exercising, or if it's low, then maybe you should take it a little bit more easy today, and so on. So they have algorithms that will suggest what you should do that day. And of course, you shouldn't just listen to your wearables. You must also listen to your body and what
Mhm.
you feel as well, of course, because the watches, they use artificial intelligence, and you have your own intelligence that you know what's going on around you and in your life, that that the watches don't know. But the
Mhm.
watches, through the heart rate, can tell you things about how your body's doing that you're really not equipped to understand yourself, because throughout evolution, we didn't really need to listen to our heart. Uh, all the threats came from the outside, from other animals, from enemies, from food that was contaminated, and so on. We had to have a good sense of smell, to smell that you're not supposed to eat this. But we didn't really need this sense into our own bodies,
Mhm.
because we used to hunt and fight if we had to. And other than that, we were relaxing, as a species. And but now the big threat to our health that comes from the inside, from a stress level that is too high
Mhm.
compared to what we are made for.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so helpful for people to hear that too. Just recognizing that, our systems have not evolved to meet the demands of what life is today. So we have to then adapt to it. We have to not adapt, but like we have to be very conscious of that and be responsible for it, because we can't change the things that are going on outside of us. Like we have responsibility for ourselves. So I think that's very empowering to hear that, like, many of us try to just reduce all the things that are happening in the external environment, but here we have the ability to just take care of our own inner environment. And I think that's really empowering. And I know you talk about sleep. How can we use heart rate variability to improve our sleep?
Yeah. So when we sleep, when our sleep is in the recovery state, then the heart rate variability is good throughout the night.
Mhm.
Our body is in the relaxed state. When we breathe in, the heart rate goes up, and when we breathe out, the heart rate goes down. And the more relaxed we are, the better our immune system works. So that is an important metric to measure the quality of our sleep, to see if our sleep is restorative or non-restorative. So and it's important to sleep well. That is the first thing in my book, to focus on sleep, because once you get enough sleep, you get more surplus energy to do the hard things, to make the hard choices throughout the day. To eat well and to go exercising, and so on. So sleep is really the key, maybe the most important thing, to make sure that you get 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep.
Mhm.
And you will get the answer to this in the morning with the wearables.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's so funny with our phones. We obviously know phone's not going to work unless we plug it in and restore the battery. But for some reason, we expect our bodies to just go endlessly without ever rejuvenating them. So I think I love that we can now use this to improve our sleep and really understand if we are getting restorative sleep. And so, one other thing I know you talk about is alcohol. So, what are the impacts of alcohol on our hearts, on our bodies, and you know, we often hear, a drink a day is healthy, and I think that's broadcasted. Is that true? And what should we be
Mm,
doing to maximize our health around alcohol?
yeah, that was what I was hoping for, because I was drinking a couple of glasses of wine every day. That was actually doctor's orders. That was what was recommended for men, and
Mhm.
one glass of wine for women. But that is not true any longer. We have seen beyond those numbers, because what we were tricked by as doctors was that those who were drinking 2 glasses of wine, they had a better health. But it wasn't the glasses of wine that was important, but that they did it in a social setting. So they were less lonely. And now we know that loneliness in itself is a huge risk factor for heart disease and cancer and all kinds of diseases, because it creates stress in our systems. So in these ancient brains that we have, being lonely, feeling lonely is a big danger. That you are alone on the savannah, you are uh, susceptible to attacks from other animals and so on. So feeling lonely will stress our systems and have an impact on our immune system. So, but now we have corrected for this bias, so we now see that any amount of alcohol is bad for us. And alcohol is the worst thing you can do to your heart rate variability.
Mhm.
So that's what you see immediately, that if you go out and have 2, 3, 4 drinks, then the heart rate variability that night will be a lot worse. And that is also why we can see that after a night of drinking, it's a lot easier to contract, getting a cold, getting a virus infection, and so on, because the immune system is not working so well after this, because it has been working on detoxifying the alcohol, and then there will be less energy available for the immune system to do its job.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I think it's still a common misconception that, like, alcohol is healthy for your system. But and now I appreciate you sharing the more recent research on that. I think it's so interesting that it was the social effects that were causing that. I think that's very interesting. I think that's also another major problem we have going on, where we're so connected, but yet we feel very disconnected socially. And I'm sure that plays a huge role in continuing to impact our health. I know you talked about food. Can you talk about, with so many things that are processed and so many quick foods, how is that impacting our health as far as our heart and everything?
Yeah, that is also what is so interesting once you start tracking your system, that you can see that the food has such a big impact on your stress levels. So
Mhm,
if you eat ultra processed food, if you eat food that you have some food intolerance to,
mhm,
then you will see immediately on the heart rate that it will go up and the heart rate variability will go down. And particularly if you're eating late meals, that will have a
mhm,
big effect. So even though if you're in the sofa watching Netflix and having a bag of crisps or some candy or whatever, so when you thought that you were relaxing, your monitor will show you that you are stressed, and it's the food that stresses your intestines. And that was a huge surprise for me. I would never have thought that food was a stressor on my system. So then, of course, it's more motivating to make the better choices, to finish your last meal maybe at 7 o'clock in the evening, 3, 4 hours before you go to bed, and then stay away from junk food when you see the results on your wearable. Then it's so much easier to be motivated to make a better choice, to have a salad instead, and fruits and so on. So that was some of the big surprises for many people, that
yeah.
food has such a large impact on your stress levels.
Yeah, I love how you can track it too, because I think with food, especially, it's like if you can see that more objectively, it gives you enough space to remove yourself from that, where you can be like, not make such emotionally dependent decisions on what you're eating, actually say like, okay, this is actually not serving me or helping my system in a way. Going off of just kind of our overall lifestyle and how things have changed, especially in the last like 10, 20 years, as far as like social media scrolling, had you know how that impacts heart rate variability? Is there any research on that?
Yeah, or the good thing is that we don't really need to look at the research,
Hmm.
because even say that if you ask 1,000 people and you say that, okay, now you're going to scroll and be on social media for half an hour and see how you react to it,
Hmm.
then you will find an average. But that doesn't necessarily matter much to you, because you may be far away from the average, because some people will be stressed by it, and other people will be calmer by it. I get lots of reports from people saying that one of the things to calm me down is scrolling through social media. Other people, they're very stressed by it. So these variables can show you how you are reacting to a certain stressor or a certain situation, which of course is the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think we often hear, though, the doom scrolling and all how bad it is, but I think it's interesting where we can really just look inside ourselves and how am I responding versus the masses. I think that's so fascinating and so important to realize that, like, how are we responding to things specifically. Can you talk about, I would love to know more about when we're tracking our heart rate, how long do we need to track it for before heart rate variability? How long do we need to track it for to see these trends, or is it pretty instantaneously that we can see how we're responding to them?
Yeah, usually I must then use the Garmin watches, which is one that I use and that I
Mhm.
know best. The Garmin watch will spend like 3 weeks finding your baseline. So after 3 weeks, when you can just live your life just as you have done, then you will find your baseline, and then it's interesting to change one thing at a time. So maybe you start focusing on your sleep. Maybe you quick identify that alcohol is not so good, so you start reducing that. So many people that start using the wearables, they cut down on alcohol.
Mhm.
That's kind of the first thing that they do, that they cut down what I call the unnecessary glasses, when you could just as well have a soft drink or a glass of water or anything, and then you keep going. If there's a wedding, if there's a social setting with friends, then you may prioritize that,
Mhm.
even if you know that the day after there will be a price for that. So many people will reduce their alcohol automatically when they see the results.
Mhm.
So then you can start. And then, of course, not everybody will find out that they are too stressed, but
Mhm.
I would say that 80% of us, they are too stressed. That is what they will find. When they
Mhm.
see the results, they will be a bit disappointed because they will see that they are too stressed. And for some of those people, it can be quite fast to find the balance. They just need to adjust some on the alcohol, go to bed a little bit earlier, and then they're okay.
Mhm.
But other people may find out that it's a long way. They are very stressed. Their autonomic nervous systems are kind of locked in a stressful state.
Mhm.
And it can take half a year, to get their balance. And
Mhm.
those are often the same people that have symptoms. They have migraines. They
Mhm.
have bloating symptoms. They have irregular periods. They have headaches. They have fatigue symptoms. Uh, so so, so for most of those people, it will not come as a surprise, but they will be able to see the extent of their stress levels.
Mhm.
And what is important about that is that as doctors, we don't have any other metric that shows this.
Mhm.
So when these patients go to their doctor and ask for blood work and to take the tests that the doctor have at their disposal, nothing shows up. So but the stress level through the heart rate will show it. The heart reacts very quickly to these different stressors.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. I also love it too, because I know sometimes when people are seeking out some reason for why they're experiencing certain symptoms, they want some kind of like, okay, what is the reason? And so if they're seeing that the heart rate variability is off, it can sometimes be very validating to their experience, I would imagine, because you're seeing it. And now if you're seeing that that's improving, hopefully you're also noticing
Yeah,
your symptoms are improving.
yeah, and you don't have to go to the doctor to get the result. You see it
Mhm. Right.
on your phone, through your
Mhm.
watch. So
Absolutely.
it makes it so much more manageable when you can measure the effects of this.
Just something out of curiosity, how does pain impact this? If you're someone who has chronic pain and how does that impact your heart rate variability, or if you're just experiencing acute pain?
That is very interesting because oftentimes the acute pain will result in a better heart rate variability. I'm not sure why that happens. So many people say that when they go to their dentist, when they experience migraines, when they have pains of certain kinds, then their heart rate variability gets better. If that is because the body makes its own endorphins, the morphine kind of substances in the brain, that may be part of the reason. Maybe when they have pain, they take everything more easy, and that is why the results will get better. But that actually happens, and maybe it's also the reason why so many people the self-mutilation when they cut themselves and they experience more calm. So many of that is part of my job as an emergency physician to stitch those wounds from the self-inflicted wounds, and many of them will say that it calms them down. And so this may be one of the reasons why this happens, because there's a mechanism in our bodies that makes us calmer when we experience this acute pain. I also seem to find that chronic pain is correlated to lower heart rate variability. So, but it's not so clear cut that pain is a low heart rate variability and no pain is a good thing. So, it is interesting also to Google that, to Google pain and heart rate variability. You can see different findings on that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's just I'll have to look more into that because I think that's so fascinating and how that all impacts us. I know the pain is very much integrated with the nervous system. So yeah, that's very fascinating to me. I know you talk
And
about
many people use this, you have kind of a I don't know what you call it. You have these spikes that you can have, that you can sleep on a mattress of
Mhm.
spikes.
Mhm.
And that has a good influence on many people. These
Mhm.
small painful things that gives them a little bit of pain, so they're actually relaxing better.
So interesting. So I actually have a mat that has the little spikes in it and you lay
Yeah,
on it. So, and like, it is actually really relaxing, even though you like feel, if you like touch it, it's actually, it hurts, but it's very relaxing to lay on. So that's so
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. I love when things make sense or like why it works. Yeah. So interesting. I love that. I know you talk about top 8 strategies to increase your life by 24 years. Can you talk about your top 8 strategies and what does that look like?
Yeah. So that is from a big American research, 700,000 American veterans from the military service that has been followed for 11 years.
Mhm.
And they could see that when you have these 8 lifestyle strategies and you do them right, you live 24 years longer than if you did all of them wrong.
Mm.
And if you started when you were 40, you will live 24 years longer. The good thing is that if you start when you're 60, you live 16 years longer.
Mm.
So you can
Wow.
literally probably almost double the rest of your lifetime, remaining lifetime, if you
Mhm.
implement these changes from when you're 60 years old. So it's never too late.
Mhm.
Earlier, we as a doctors used to think that, okay, if you're 70 years old, then it doesn't really matter what you do. You're
Mhm.
old anyway, and you're going down, so to speak.
Yeah.
But actually, at that age is when it's most important to do the
Mhm.
right lifestyle choices. And those 8 choices, it's more or less the exact things that I'm talking about in the Pulse Cure. It's
Mhm.
managing your stress levels, it's exercising, it's sleeping well, it's eating the good diet, it's refraining from smoking or other uses of tobacco. It's also to be social, to have good relations, and it is to stay away from opioids.
Mhm.
Opioids I'm not talking about in the Pulse Cure, but it's a bigger problem in the US, with the opioid crisis than in Norway. So that's also an important thing.
Mhm.
The eighth thing I can't remember exactly at the moment, but it's anyway, alcohol. If I didn't mention it earlier, also to drink a little alcohol. I think that's the number 8.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so all these things are combined. If you do all these things right, you can live then 24 years longer. And that is also exactly my impression as a clinician. So if you do this thing right, then a lot of people will reach into their 90s. If you do all of these things wrong, then you'll be lucky to pass 70 years old. So it's also my clinical experience. So, well, these are the good things to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not just quantity, but you're also gaining quality by implementing those as well, which is
Yeah.
absolutely essential in life as well.
Yeah, you live longer, and you live also healthier lives. You're less restricted by physical symptoms and debilitating symptoms, because so many people in their 50s and 60s, they're not able to enjoy their life to the full because they have pains. They cannot move very fast. If they're walking up a hill, they get tired and so on. So it's not only the years that we need, we also had to add life to the years also.
Absolutely. So important there. And I'm just so grateful for everything you shared. And I hope for anyone listening, they take even just one thing that you've said and start making that change and then allow it to snowball. And for someone who wanted to get your book, connect with you, where can they find you?
The book they can find anywhere. It's a normal published book. It's also an audiobook. So many people listening to podcasts may prefer to listen to it as an audiobook. You can, if you have an iPhone, it's in the book app on your iPhone. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. So yeah, it's also an ebook, so you could order it as an ebook on the same outlets. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram. I'm Dr. Torkil, dr.torkil. And I also have a website called thepulsecure.com, where you can see a video lecture. I talk more about these things, and you can see what I'm referring to when I see with the Garmin watches and the curves of the stress levels and so on. So yeah.
Amazing. I'll put everything in the show notes too for anyone who's listening. Definitely grab the book, connect with Dr. Torkil. And I'm so honored and grateful that you are here and sharing everything that you did today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me talk about my passion. Yeah.
Absolutely. I truly enjoyed it and I gained something from it too as well. So I'm so grateful. So thank you again. And again, thank for everyone who tuned in today.